Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Dan and Joe Sports Show. As always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.
And Joe, we were picking up where we left off to segue into our Masters preview. I wanted to talk a little bit about Kim Mulkey's jacket that she was wearing at the National Championship and really just her attire throughout. I personally loved it. I'm not going to say it was good fashion. In fact, I don't think many people probably would say it was, but it definitely got your eye. And let me say this, if that jacket didn't scream just being an ultimate LSU person, I don't know what does.
No, I could certainly see that. And, it stands out so much. I think it builds on the point that we were talking about in an earlier segment about just personalities right now in women's basketball. And I think, too, when I look at Kim Mulkey, we can compliment how good she's been as a coach. But I also would add in, too, you look back to the trajectory of her career as a player. She won a national championship at Louisiana Tech as an assistant coach. She also won a national title there in 1988. And so she's proven that even in smaller conferences, she could still win national titles. And so she is just a proven winner through and through.
Yeah, and she's a real Louisianan. So, I mean, this was like a dream come true for her to come back and take the LSU job. I mean, this was the job to her, kind of like it was to Coach O. I mean, it was the one that mattered. That was the one that no matter where she was at, no matter how much success she had at Baylor, when Mama came calling, she was going to come back to LSU. Even though she played at Louisiana Tech, I mean, that is the charter school of Louisiana, so that's the job that was there for her. And she's just a winner at every level. And I knew when LSU made that hire, I was like, their athletic director right now, he doesn't joke around. I mean, he goes out, he gets Kim Mulkey, he went and got Brian Kelly. I mean, they've made real moves. And I knew when they hired Kim Mulkey, she was going to win a national championship. And I knew she was going to have a real effect quickly. I did not think she was going to win a national championship in year number two. I thought maybe it would take about 3 to 4 years before she would actually get a title. But you're right, Joe. I mean, it's almost like LSU got punished a little bit for not being, Tennessee and UConn and South Carolina the last couple of years by getting this 3 seed. And they should have been a 1 seed to begin with in this one. And it shouldn't have been such a surprise they did win the national championship this year.
Yeah, I mean, I want to look back, at the tournament history, both in the men's and women's side. But I would venture to say I cannot imagine a team from a power conference that ever entered a tournament with a record of 28-2 that was seeded 3 or lower.
Right. I mean, and you look at Iowa on the converse, they showed they were every bit deserving of a 2 seed, but they had 6 losses during the regular season. And yet they were sitting there as a 2 seed, and LSU was a 3 seed. And I think a lot of people probably looked at those numbers and Kaitlin Clark, and Iowa actually came into that game as the favorite, which I knew I was worried for Iowa from the get-go on this one because what an emotional win they had to beat South Carolina to take down the champs. They had to put so much into it, and then to have to come back and take on a really talented and well-coached LSU team. I kind of liked LSU from the beginning on this one.
Yeah, I felt a similar way, Dan. Like I never really understood why people were calling it that much of an upset for LSU to win. I felt like LSU had the all-around, better team. What Kaitlin Clark did, I think for me, historically reminded me of what Larry Bird did taking Indiana State to the finals. It's like
Mm-hmm.
this was his show, this was her show, and she just didn't have to me the supporting cast to be able to pull through.
There were some good players they had. I thought Zanano was really good on the inside, a really, not the most versatile big, but someone that could get a lot of rebounds that, got to the free throw line a lot. And the Marshall guy was a really good defender that they had up front, but there wasn't a whole lot of ability for big scoring potential outside of Caitlin Clark. And to be honest, what I thought was incredible too is that Caitlin Clark not only could score as many points as she did, she's such a great facilitator. I mean, I think they looked at it and like 85% of her team's points the entire tournament came from either her scoring or her assists. I mean, her passing was just as impressive as her shooting.
No, that's a compelling point. I'm glad you brought that up. I was just blown away with her passing. I saw multiple passes in the game against South Carolina that I watched, and I don't know. I felt like I was reacting, positively to, everything that she was doing as a facilitator.
Yeah, and I really like South Carolina and Dawn Staley, but I found myself rooting for Iowa just because I wanted to watch her again because she really is that compelling. I mean, she could shoot it from anywhere on the floor like Steph Curry, and then there's like just a minute opening, and then boom, she zooms it right in there. A lot of times where they're anticipating where the ball is going to go, almost like a good quarterback. And I mean, it was like some Magic Johnson type assist. It was amazing.
It really was. That's very well said.
Yeah, and something else that I liked about her too was her free throw shooting. I think she missed one shot against LSU, but it was one of the most consistent free throw shots I've ever seen. It had that low arch every single time, and it just was nothing but net like every time she shot it. And that's something that me as an Auburn basketball fan, I'm like, I wish we had a little bit of that this year because that's what cost us against Houston. I mean, that kind of free throw shooting is also something that's just a huge deal.
No, it really is. Yeah, I mean, Kaitlin Clark, she has all the intangibles and all the skill set, of a just fantastic player. And I think, when you add all that together, it just makes sense the stage that she has and the record breaking performance that she had in the tournament. And I'm really excited to see what she does next year in an encore. I think that her, the effect that she has on women's basketball, I think is just fantastic for the sport.
I think it is too. And I'm so glad she's coming back. I think it's going to add a lot of intrigue to next year's season. If they can do anything to schedule an Iowa and LSU regular season game or an Iowa and South Carolina regular season game, they need to make it happen because I think that would get a lot of eyeballs on the screen. And I think both of those are going to be rivalries for the next season. I mean, everything with Angel Reese and Kaitlin Clark and some of the things that happened that national championship game, like the technical getting called against Kaitlin Clark for her throwing the ball away that kind of ended their chances, and Zanano getting fouled out at that point, and then of course getting mocked by Angel Reese and all them afterwards. It would just make for something that'd be so good to get to watch those Warriors go at it again.
And I'll tell you, another player that is coming back next year. Maybe the most talented player in the country, Paige Buchers, didn't even play all season with an injury at Connecticut. And so she's going to be back next year. And so I would also love to see her against Kaitlin Clark in a game.
Yeah, that would be really good to watch right there because Paige Bucher was like the number one player last year and was having a huge effect and getting some interest the year before. And then Kaitlin Clark's just kind of taking that to a whole new level.
Right, exactly.
And what's going to be crazy is, we talk about, Kim Mulkey getting her national championship and Kaitlin Clark, and then Dawn Staley has suddenly become a little bit of an afterthought with what an incredible season she had with a team that just had one bad night. I mean, they hadn't lost a game the entire season. They almost hadn't lost a game in 2 years. And Kaitlin Clark goes off for 40 points. They miss some free throws. And then they miss out on having the perfect season. And, Dawn Staley now she's still only got, I think she's got 2 national championships. Yeah, she's got 2. And we're talking about Kim Mulkey being the number 3 overall head coach. And I think Dawn Staley, had she won this one this year, you and I would have been talking about how now you can call her after Gino Auriemma and Pat Summitt as the number 3 overall coach all time in women's basketball.
Yes, precisely. And I think what adds to her legacy for me personally is the fact that she was able to win one of those national titles last year against UConn. Any national title is special, but when you go through UConn, to me, that just adds to the score.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's like beating North Carolina, Duke, or UCLA in the national championship game in men's, or Kentucky. It just adds a little extra fire to it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Which, not that she needs any more, because Dawn Staley's she's got such a great personality herself. I mean, we talked about Kim Mulkey with her incredible jackets and, just kind of repping the bling, but Dawn Staley's just got a really kind of cool, unique swagger to herself, and her team plays different than almost any other team that you see in women's basketball.
They really do. There's definitely that unique flair.
And she's also known for repping some cool jackets. She kind of has more of like the starter jacket feel. She doesn't have any green jackets yet, but her and Kaitlin Clark are all big fans of the Masters. I saw Kaitlin Clark was tweeting about that. And Joe, I mean, I always forget that the Masters comes up this quickly right after the NCAA tournament. It's in just the next week. And, of course, Easter weekend's always when you have it. This is going to be one that's going to be interesting. We see Tiger Woods coming back yet again after a really terrible injury. and get to play in his first Masters since probably all of us thought he would never play golf again. And it's basically going to be who can unseat Scotty Scheffler for the Masters, because right now he is a heavy favorite.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting storyline with him and Tiger, and then Rory McIlroy, up there trying to get that career Grand Slam. And then also, too, is an aside, I thought about with how close, you're talking about the March Madness ends with the start of the Masters. We saw, of course, Jim Nantz retire as far as calling March Madness games on Monday night. That was his last ever championship game in the Final Four. And he'll, of course, move right to calling the Masters this weekend for CBS.
Well, that's great. He's a fantastic announcer, and he's kind of someone that you associate with March Madness. And they've done a really good job, those Capital One commercials, of including him in there with Charles Barkley and Magic Johnson and Spike Lee and Samuel L. Jackson. And it's almost like even heightened, his effect that he has on March, and kind of put him more in the radar. Because, I think when I was younger, I thought about Bill Raftery more when I thought about college basketball during March Madness, more so than Bill Nantz. But Bill Nantz has been doing it for such a long time and is also a great announcer.
And two, Nantz, he's only 63. He's been doing this for 33 years. And so I felt like he had maybe another 20 years he could have done it. And so I was a little bit surprised to see him hang it up as far as March Madness when he did. I think one reason he did it is he's a native of Houston, and he's also a graduate of the University of Houston. So I think he was maybe hoping they could win the national championship and he could go out that way. But definitely glad, that he's still on the air this weekend with the Masters.
Yeah, he's a very young 63, and I was kind of surprised that he retired too. But I guess, everything lined up except for Kelvin Sampson's boys actually getting it done and getting the national championship this year for him to do that. But I'm glad I'll get to hear him do golf too, because he's also got a very good cadence for golf announcing.
Yeah, and he'll still be doing, I guess, the CBS football broadcast with Tony Romo too.
Okay. Well, that's good. I guess he just has so many responsibilities. He was ready to take a little bit of a break during this time of year.
Yes.
Joe, I wanted to put you on notice of someone that I think has a good chance to win, who's someone that, gets talked about a decent amount, but probably is not going to be the main person that you hear as someone who's going to win the Masters this weekend. I think Xander Schauffele is someone to really look for. He's finished second before in 2019. He has a very even kind of game. He's someone that if this weather turns bad, like what they're expecting on Friday through Sunday, he's someone who I don't think that's going to have a huge effect on. And he's also really due for a major. I think he's had like 3 second-place finishes at different majors, including at Augusta. And I think he's someone that's due. And I feel like the last few years, Augusta's kind of been a place where a lot of new major winners have emerged. So I think Xander Schauffele is someone to look for.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely be paying attention to him. And that was definitely something I wanted to hear from you as far as feedback on who is somebody, a little bit off the radar that has a great chance to win. I am curious, though, about the weather aspect and kind of your thoughts on it. My question, I guess, starts with what is impacted more when you have bad weather for a golf event like the Masters? Is it going to be the putting? Is it going to be hitting it off the tee? Like, where do you think we'll see the biggest impact?
I think you're going to see a bigger impact off the tee, because I think what this does is it really affects players who are so bent on getting long drives. So I think people like Dustin Johnson are going to get affected by it a lot. Someone like Bryson DeChambeau, I think he's going to be affected by this. And meanwhile, you're more kind of workman-like golfers like a Xander Schauffele, who's not as long off the tee box, or even going old school, someone like a Zach Johnson, who's won Augusta a couple times. This doesn't affect them as much because that's not the big part of their game to begin with. They're more about trying to get up and down. They're not going to go for par fives and 2 shots. They're more trying to get birdies the more traditional way. And I think this is going to affect them a lot less, more so than the big hitters.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there any type of weather they won't play in? Obviously, with the exception of lightning. Like if it's just raining, will they continue to play, or is there any regulation on that?
They're going to keep playing unless it's really awful with rain, because they've got kind of a space-age drainage system at Augusta National, which, you can have a pretty sizable rain and they're still able to drain it to where they can still play. And that's something they've designed over the years. And so it's going to take a pretty bad storm and lightning for them to not play.
Okay. I got you. That makes sense.
And so this is going to be something too that, you know, an older golfer, someone like a Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson, this might help them out a little bit too if there's bad weather, because they've, of course, can't hit it the way they used to, but they still have a lot of the consistency. And I mean, Tiger Woods is someone who's won plenty of tournaments, including, you know, the British Open a couple times without even using a driver. So this negative weather could help some of these older players make a good showing too.
Yeah, no, I can see that certainly being the case. As you watch Tiger in the early rounds, like what will you be watching for to be able to be an indicator that he's on his game early on?
Well, Joe, I think something that I want to see with Tiger is whether he's hitting in the fairway, because I feel like, you know, really kind of since he had his second knee surgery after he won the U.S. Open in 2008 against Rocco Mediate, I don't feel like he's been able to keep it in the fairway as much, and I think that's affected him to a large degree, and why he's only won one major since then at the Masters. And I'm hoping that with, you know, having this awful wreck, with, you know, multiple knee surgeries and back surgeries, if he can, you know, maybe hit it a little shorter but keep it in the fairway, that can help him out a lot, because you get in really bad shakes if you don't keep it in the fairway at Augusta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could certainly see that being a big impact, not being able to keep it straight there. Now, when you were talking about hitting it off the tee, like, is there any concern if it's raining really hard about, you know, like in football, sometimes the football will fall off the tee? Like, does that ever happen occasionally in golf?
It can happen. You just got to be really careful about it. I mean, that's why you have caddies that you pay 10% of your overall earnings to, because they'll make sure they'll, you know, dry your ball off, all that kind of stuff, to make sure that doesn't happen. Dry the tee off, because if that happens, that's a stroke penalty. And it's not like you and I out there playing golf where, you know, maybe you just don't account that, or you take a drop or something like that. Of course, they're really strict on the rules of the Masters and at any professional tournament. And that's something that can be a big deal.
Well, now, one thing I just thought of with rules, like, what is the protocol as far as like drying off the golf balls? Like, you know, when it's raining, like, can they like go to a towel or something routinely, or is there any regulation on that?
Well, I mean, when you're on the green, you can dry it off because you can mark your ball for putts. You know, before you tee off, that's acceptable to do it. Now, the problem you have, Joe, is when you hit it in the middle of the fairway, or if you hit it in the rough, you're not able to pick it up then. You just got to hit it as it is.
Oh, wow. That'll really be interesting.
Yes. Now, the only caveat to that is if you have what's called casual water. And so if you hit it in the fairway and there's a huge mud puddle right there and the ball's submerged, you can call that casual water and you can move it. And so that's something that can happen, to where the ball can be moved and dried off a little bit. But if it's just sitting in a spot where it's kind of wet, that's not considered casual water. Casual water would be standing water.
What about like in the sand traps if it ends up in some mud there?
No, you have to just hit it out of the sand trap.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's gonna affect some people. And speaking of affecting people, I'm really interested to see. I mentioned Dustin Johnson and Bryson DeChambeau, who are heavy hitters. They also happen to be live golfers on the live tour right now. Them and a lot of the other ones, including Cameron Smith, have been seen around Augusta wearing all their live team jackets and polos and everything, and it's causing a little bit of a stir. I mean, they decided to bring the live golfers in for this tournament because, I mean, let's be honest, none of us want to watch a major where you're missing, you know, 4 or 5 out of the top 10 players in the world. You want to see everybody playing because, you know, I don't really care whether you play on the live tour or not, but I am interested to see how brash they are about being, you know, on this live tour and showing all this pride for this event, because I kind of feel like that's almost creating an unnecessary controversy.
Well, you know, what I like in it too is it reminds me of like the days, if you know, look at the history of like pro basketball to pro football, when you had like the AFL, NFL rivalry, or the, you know, NBA against, what was the name of the, yeah, ABA. And so like, I feel like maybe it's one of the closest things we've really seen to that in the modern age.
I mean, that's exactly what it's like, Joe. I mean, they're two separate leagues right now. where I guess there's kind of been a little bit of an agreement reached that these majors are kind of like the Super Bowl, where you can bring both of these leagues together and have the best players at it. But it's adding a very interesting subplot. And I mean, some of these players out here can be, quite cantankerous. Bryson DeChambeau is known to really rub people the wrong way, and not a lot of golfers like him. Someone like Patrick, I'm trying to think of his last name. He won the Masters a few years ago. That was a guy that a lot of people didn't like, and he kind of get in people's faces. And Tiger Woods is known to kind of mess with people a little bit. So I think you're going to see a little bit more a little bit more trash talking and people messing with each other on the course this year than you're probably used to seeing in a major.
I guess that, kind of like we always talk about the committee in March Madness will kind of like, pair certain matchups that are interesting. I guess there's probably conveniently some live golfers paired with some PGA guys.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think there's a good chance you might see someone like Bryson DeChambeau tee off with Tiger. And, of course, there was the big joke earlier this year where Tiger was playing with, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the golfer from Alabama that's so good that won a major recently. Younger guy, I can't think of his name right now. But he had like a shot in the water or something, and Tiger Woods had a tampon in his pocket and gave it to him. I think you're going to see, I think you're going to see stuff like that happen during this, because there's going to be a lot of reasons the PGA Tour guys are going to want to like make an example out of the live golfers, I think.
Yeah, no, that would be crazy for the PGA Tour to finally be PG 13.
Justin Thomas, that's who I was trying to think of. Tiger Woods did that, and it was a great video too. You can see Tiger kind of like snickering when he does it, and all the pictures of it. It was a really funny moment because Tiger and Justin Thomas are good buddies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that story.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see some stuff like that, and I think that there's going to be people in particular. What I would love to see is for them to have Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka play together, because that's a rivalry that's really well known about, and we've talked about on the show before. And I think that Brooks Koepka has stayed in the PGA while Bryson DeChambeau went to live, which I could see Brooks Koepka, as much as he dislikes Bryson DeChambeau, just deciding to stay in PGA just because Bryson DeChambeau went to live.
Mm-hmm. No, I could definitely see that being an undercurrent of a major subplot.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think this is like adds a little bit more to this Masters than what I've seen. But yeah, I'm excited about it though. I mean, like I said, I would definitely put Scotty Scheffler as a big favorite, but I think Xander Schauffele is someone that has a great chance. And if I were to think about someone else that I think could win this, I think Will Zalatoris is someone to watch out for. I know he's a golfer that you like a lot. Got a very consistent game. He's someone that does hit it a long way, but he definitely has all the tools in his playbook to where if he has to take it down a little bit with his driver, he's still got such a good iron game that I think Zalatoris is someone that could finally break through and win his first major.
Yeah, and he always reminds me of the actor, I can't remember his name, that's in a lot of movies like Night in the Museum and Wedding Crashers.
It was like Owen Wilson.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of him.
Yeah. So there's definitely some good things to watch out for. I would love to see Rory McIlroy win it because, we talked about it. He's won every major but Augusta. And the Masters was where he had his huge, I think what was leading by 12 strokes in the second round, and then had that huge collapse when he kind of first came on the scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of remember that, like 2011 or so.
Yeah. Well, I was in college. I remember when this happened, and that was kind of when Rory was – kind of hitting his stride and when he first got in everybody's mindset. And so I think that'd be a good story too, to see that.
Yeah, no, it would be to get that career Grand Slam.
That's right. But yes, so we'll see. Definitely going to be a great week in Augusta, the green jacket. I'm excited to see what the weather has effect on this. And mostly I'm really excited to see the rivalry between the tour golfers and the live golfers.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating.
That's right. Well, we've had a lot of talk of jackets, from Kim Mulkey's amazing LSU Tiger glitter jacket to Dawn Staley starter jackets, of course, the green jacket now. And when we come back next week, we'll be talking about who the Masters winner is and maybe get into a little bit of spring football. I want to thank all of our listeners. You can catch all of our episodes on Spotify. You can see us in live and living color on Facebook Live and also on YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And, of course, follow us on Twitter at DJ Sports Show. And as always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.